So let us look at conducting interviews. We conduct interviews to collect data, and primarily this is primary data that we are collecting by these interviews. Okay, so we want to know how these interviews are conducted. What are the things that you need to think about when conducting interviews? Because interviews, when you conduct interviews, is one of the frequently used method of collecting data. Of course, other methods include direct observation, interviewing with schedules, post-on questionnaires, abstraction from published statistics or articles. Okay. In this presentation, we are only focusing on interviews. So let's go into that. So when we are talking about interviews, we are talking about someone who is going to ask questions and then the respondent gives the answers. Okay, so this is primary data because it is first hand. It's not someone else collecting the data on your behalf. And since it is direct, in most cases, you are able to see the respondent's reaction towards the questions that you ask. So you can make very good interpretations of those reactions. Okay, so we can have different kinds of interviews, personal interviews. You can have unstructured interviews, direct interviews, structured and then direct interviews. You can have unstructured and direct interviews. What do they mean? If I sit here and there is a correspondent, I ask them, how old are you? Where did you last eat? Where are you working from? What is your level of qualification? All those, that is personal, one-on-one. Unstructured and direct, I can have the ideas that of what I have to ask you, but I'm not following those ideas. Anything that is related to what I'm going to ask you, I will always ask you, okay? As long as it is within the same area. That is unstructured. And usually this is what happens mainly in the qualitative studies. And then for structured, I know what I want to ask you and I will ask you exactly that. The questions are very clear, usually predetermined set of questions. And then you can have unstructured, almost open, flexible conversation that I'm having with you, and indirect. Okay, the questions that I'm asking you are not very, very specific. Okay, that is what we term there. And then sometimes I may not have to sit with you. I may have to contact you via, let us say, a phone call or even Zoom or Google Meet. Panel interview, where you have several people who are going to interview you if you are, for example, a candidate for a particular job. Okay, so that's what we talked about, electronic, which is basically almost like telephone interview. Okay. So what are the merits of direct interview? One-on-one. You get what you want because you know the questions and the person is in front of you, and you can always get accurate, original, reliable data. And since it is not unstructured, you know what you're looking for. That means that the data that you will get will be very consistent. And that also means that there is uniformity, especially if it is only you who is asking all the different participants. It's flexible. You always, since you know what you're asking for, if the person does not understand what you're asking, you can always adjust the question such that they give you the appropriate response. So sometimes our questions are not the best, but since it is direct, we can always change the question accordingly. Okay, so there is that ability to make sure that the data that you are collecting is accurate. Okay, and since you're facing the person, you're able to interpret what they are saying based on the responses they are giving you, but also based on their body gestures. The challenge is that it may be subjective because you are there, the person may actually respond in a particular way just because you are there. So your presence may influence what the respondent is actually giving you. Since you need to sit down with the respondent, it means it is time consuming and therefore resources are required. That's why we are saying it is expensive. And yes, there's potential for biases. Um, if the topic that you're discussing is a complex topic, then that means that you need to be ready to sit for long hours. And that may not be good for you. So indirect interviews, you can call them indirect oral interviews, where the investigator gathers information from third parties, okay, friends, relatives, and neighbors. That is, if it is not very easy to access the person that you are interested in, or the person is not able to give you their own responses, then you can get from relatives, friends, and maybe neighbors. Not very accurate, because you ideally supposed to get that information from the person who is concerned. So the challenge is that yes, it has its own limitation, but you can still apply it. You can save money, time, and labor, reduces bias, and things like that. The challenges are that the information may actually be biased, not very accurate, expensive since you have to consult many people. You see, if one relative gives you, another relative may give you opinions or views that are not in rhyming with the first respondent. So you may need to get more respondents for you to have concrete information. So that's why contradictions can arise, and if you're not a good investigator, you can arrive at distorted data. Okay, but generally interviewing as a whole, you need to have the time, the resources, the skills to be able to do that. Otherwise, the challenge is that you always get biased data. So the way you structure your questionnaires, the way you ask the questionnaires, how you arrange the questions, it's all very, very important. Otherwise, you can get information that is not very accurate.